You are now listening to On Air with Lewis Hunter.
Welcome to On Air with Lewis Hunter, where we go to the ins and outs of celebs, professionals, and behind the scenes of your favorite movies and films. Today I'm joined by Steven Donnelly. How are you doing?
How's it going, Lewis? You all good, man?
Yes, I'm pretty good, Steven. What about you?
Okay. I'm a bit tired. We were running the esteemed local band, and so watching them from afar, or Azzy as I always call them, because I can't be bothered saying the full name. We're running them into Voodoo last night, and Voodoo, for anybody who's local to Belfast, will know: one, best venue in the city; two, it's a sardine can. It's 220 cap venue. So when you put a band that can fill 1,600 cap venues in the city, in a small place like that, people go mental. And it's just over the last couple of months, we've started running events as proper productions again. So it's everything kind of coming at once. So tomorrow, And So I Watch You From Afar, or Azzy Wivwa, plays Sandino's in Derry, or Londonderry, Derry, Londonderry, for to keep it PC.
Yeah.
And it's the same again, Again, they're a band who can play at such a caliber internationally.
Well,
and it's the last show for us, and I'm kind of glad about that, because I cannot wait for the break. 100%. I really can't. My business partner is doing my head in. I can't wait to get away from her for 6 weeks. It's going to be amazing.
Well, Steven, for people that may have just listened to this podcast, this is the first episode, so I want to say thank you all for coming and paying attention and giving support. But for people who don't know
this is the first episode?
This is the first episode, yes.
Wait, hey, awesome.
So for people that don't know what you do and are probably thinking to themselves, oh, what is he talking about, Voodoo? What is this? Could you give them an explanation of what you do in the industry?
So a little bit of just a biographical background on me. So I'm Steven Donnelly. I'm one of the co-directors and promoters for Live Free Tour Booking, or under my own guise of Rackus Ratus Promo Co. And when I'm not doing that, I also either work as a journalist, as a photographer for a couple of different rock magazines. And if I'm not doing that, I'm a wedding photographer. And if I'm not doing that, I'm finishing a PhD in human geography and urban planning. And when I'm not doing that, how I met Lewis is I work as a support worker for Belfast Metropolitan College.
Yeah, that sounds like a very interesting career you've got ahead of yourself.
A lot of eggs in different baskets, but they all have their rewards. I absolutely love what I do with the Belfast Met. 100%. It's great crack. It's good people like yourself, Lewis. Everyone's just lots of fun. It's a real chill environment.
100%.
And, the funny thing is, it actually all stemmed from my love of gigs and photography that kind of led me into the live music industry. Okay. But obviously this stuff with the Belfast Met and the PhD kind of came off each other. So there's two kind of separate streams run at the same time. It's the academic on one side that kind of gave way to working as a support worker, especially during the COVID-19 pandemic. And then you have like the going to gigs with friends, do it my entire life with my dad, and then picking up a camera around 4 or 5 years ago. Then you find yourself working for magazines, then going off on tour, and then all of a sudden you're going, right, well, I'm going to gigs. Why don't I run gigs? I was also playing gigs, either with my previous band VX, or my solo persona, which is Steven VX, or the band that I have now, which is the Art Rats. Okay. We've played everywhere in the city, Dublin, anywhere else too, and it's interesting how all those experiences kind of amalgamate and kind of just find yourself meandering around this river that, it's life is full of surprises. I never thought I would be a concert promoter.
Yeah. Well, I was going to actually ask you, why did you get into that industry? Like, what made you think, oh, that's what I really want to do? Like, was there anything before you got into that industry that may have deterred you from going down that route?
So I'm trying to think as far back as I can, because, obviously I was playing shows and I met people through the local scene who were running local gigs.
Yeah.
And then It was me and a guy called Sean ran what was known as Blackstaff Music Belfast. He was doing it maybe a year or so before I was. Then we kind of joined forces.
Okay.
And then it all kind of just started kicking off for us. We also ran a magazine that I used to design and write, along with a couple of other contributors, called Treason. I ran for about 6 issues.
Right.
Then that fell apart.
Why did that fall apart?
That's just creative differences, we'll call it. And then I found myself thinking, you know what? I've got a couple of different commitments here. I'm going to do it myself.
Yeah.
So we ran in 2017 what was the Battle of Belfast, we called it. It was a battle of the bands, ran for 6 nights.
Okay.
It was great crack. Everybody got paid. Someone walked away with 500 quid plus all different prizes. A charity also walked away with considerable amounts of donations.
And whereabouts is this?
That was in Voodoo.
Okay.
And that was with Sean and my current business partner, Johnny, who ran under the guise of Shiznay Promotions.
Okay.
Which is now kind of pushed into the background because me and him went later on and formed what was originally a partnership brand, but turned into a full company, Live Free Tour Booking. So I think after the first Battle of the Bands, we were planning a second one.
Right.
And we had all these Fridays in Voodoo. And the last thing you want to do is really tick off a venue manager by bailing out of a whole bunch of Friday bookings, especially in Belfast, because it's a weekend economy in the city.
Yeah, 100%.
So we had that all planned. Then the creative differences set in between me and Sean.
Okay.
And then I had to do something about the Fridays we had. So I ran a festival, which was come to known as Smorgasbord.
Right.
Which was 4 nights of local music. It was all done properly. You could buy, it was always a £5 a night. You could also get into all 4 nights for £15. And there was a competition where if sharing social media posts or whatever, tell me why you want to go to the festival.
Okay.
And you won tickets for you and a friend for every night, plus a cheese board. Because a smorgasbord is what it is. It's a Swedish cheese board. I think it's Swedish anyway. And so it was a real great success. I really got a buzz out of it. And one of the first kind of proper gigs I ran was a hardcore band called Palm Reader. It was my friend Pete Jazz, who then he was like, I can't run the show anymore. Do you want to run it? And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to take the risk. I mean, their fee at the time I thought was like, well, that's big money, It's not really. It's chump change actually nowadays compared to what I'm working with. And it broke even.
Okay, that's quite good.
Actually, tell you what, I lost a tenner on because I had to buy like Red Bull or something. I was something of a catering writer. And it was the first time I ran with contracts, paying deposits with a band of who wasn't local, who actually had this real kind of UK European esteem about them, because I seen them a couple of years prior supporting Protest the Hero. It was one of the first shows here, and they were just
this was like one of your first big gigs.
Was it? Yeah, it was Protest there. Yeah, that was during the second one. I was kind of doubting myself there for a second because the Contortionists also played with the Contortionists also played with Protest Hero that night, but Palm Reader opened the set. And that was 2015, 2016. So it was amazing. I always kind of take this idea that life runs in circles. You always kind of find things coming back.
100%.
So that was one of the real times when we're starting to work with contracts. Then I think I did a couple of different local gigs after that. And then I kind of just went to the wayside for a while. So then planning what was to become Smorgasbord 2 was that I was engaging an artist known as Jamie Lemon, who is of Reuben fame. That was the post-hardcore band Reuben, who lot of esteem, a lot of people remember who they are. Yeah. And Jamie obviously went off in a solo career after they disbanded. So whilst engaging him about the booking, I then approached Johnny.
Okay.
Because he told me he was also chasing them as well. And I was like, do you want to do this? And he was like, hell yeah, man, let's do it. So we did book that together. And then we booked Drab Majesty together, which we had 3 weeks to plan. And it sold out instantly. It was baffling me. It's like 3 weeks
That's
to go.
quite
All
well.
these like
That's quite
all
good
these
going.
goths just came out of the darkness and just went to this show. And
100%.
then he brought the municipal waste toxic holocaust package to us, which we done Limelight. That literally just broke in on the night. Actually, no, we lost 50 quid on that show, which is funny because I always say this here: if you lose the ticket price on the door, if that is literally the remainder you're paying into your own show, that's the joke I always kind of crack. Like, say if it's like the ticket price is 30 quid and what is left to break even is £30, you're paying into your own show. So you're just going to the gig anyway, despite all the stress and the chaos that comes with event management.
Mhm.
And then we did Torch. And then I think I ran a couple of shows for him because he was doing a couple of other things at the time. I don't know what he was doing. He never tells me. And we ran Sean James in March of 2020. Awesome show.
Okay.
And then the next day was the pandemic.
And how did that affect everything?
It was the biggest kick in the teeth we could have had. We
100%.
had a considerable amount of money out in deposits.
Okay.
Into 5 figures. And then it was trying to get that back.
Yeah.
Where you had, it was just the chaos of local promoters and event managers, national level, didn't know what they were doing on that level. The booking agents and managements themselves didn't know what was going on. So it was the perfect storm. You know, everything was just, everyone was going freaking haywire.
Yeah.
People just didn't know what was happening. We're still waiting on guidance from government. We seen it coming in January, February, because I remember one of the bands that we booked in early February is a band called The 100th. 4 days later, their Italian leg of their tour got pulled because the government shut it down. So everyone kind of got an inkling of what was happening.
Yeah.
It was like, right, this is now an issue close to home. You're seeing this emergence on the news. You're seeing everything kind of just
fall into each other.
Exactly, yeah. And I mean, me and Johnny, I remember we woke up one morning and I remember just checking my emails and I thought my computer got hacked because there was like 700 emails.
Yeah.
And then I started reading down the names and I was like, Johnny, go get us lunch and coffee, man, and meet me at this place because you have a lot of stuff to do.
Yeah.
I think we spent like something like 15 hours going through emails just alone, trying to make sure these events, make sure we didn't lose a considerable amount of money, as well as kind of our reputation as well. I mean, our reputation was growing at the time, but we obviously got through it. You know, it's like for every other promoter in the city, be it small, national, whatever, you know, they all didn't know what was happening. They all had to make provisions. And then in that case, competition falls to the wayside. Yeah. And then you kind of wonder, how can we help each other? Yeah. Because some of these promoters also run venues, and those venues have staff, and those venues have overheads. And then the first lockdown happened. What was that, between March and June, July?
I think so, yeah.
And I was just working on my PhD, and then I found myself working in Donnelly just to keep the money coming in.
Yeah. Talking about PhD, that's a very, very different thing altogether than what you do currently as a promoter, photographer. Why geography and planning? What made you decide, I'm going to go to Queen's and I'm going to do that whenever you have this all behind you?
Well, I was doing that before I actually did the concert promoting. Okay. So I went to Queen's in 2012 to study a bachelor's in geography. Geography was always one of my favorite subjects. And everybody goes, oh, you study geography? I'm like going, what is your understanding of geography? And then they go, oh, I did GCSE geography. I did maps and Agenda 21 and all that. I'm like, if you knew what they were teaching, what geography was at the university level, you would think it's the most interesting thing in the world. Yeah. Because it's everything from geographical information systems where you're actually kind of visualizing the environment to, like, say, geography is a visual media. Yeah. Like real versus real and everything else, you know, to geology, geochemistry, geoforensics.
Very different to GCSE standards anyway.
See, everything that they do at a GCSE or Key Stage 3 level or A level, there has to be a real overturn of the curriculum to reflect what it actually happens at a university level. Mm-hmm. Because how it diversifies is incredible. I mean, I did everything from urban planning and GIS to paleoecology to biology and politics, everything. It's you're going in there and you're getting the master toolbox of analysis.
Yeah. And where do you
And
plan to go with this?
I've always asked myself that question over the last couple of years. I mean, I did the bachelor's in geography, then I did a master's in urban planning because I was really inspired by the module that my PhD supervisor, Dr. Satish Kumar, took in third year, which is Spaces of Urbanization. So I went on and did a master's in urban and rural design.
Yeah.
And then I was offered the PhD by him. And the PhD itself is what's classified as historical geography, which, here's the mouthful, it seeks to utilize biographical methodologies as a way of analyzing historic environments and persons and their interactions with the contemporary environment. Or in short, you study the biographies and lives of people of the past and see what their impact is on today's environment. And yeah, it's been a journey with that. That's been from late 2016, early 2017. The pandemic did not help because it restricted my access to archives and traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And then, just had so many other different projects happening once. I ended up suffering a bit of burnout in my third year, which, to anybody listening who's undertaking a thesis of master's or PhD level, is always prioritize your health. Make sure you're working at your pace, because if you're trying to do about 40 different things at once, you will think you're doing really well, but then all of a sudden you will crash. And that is the worst thing that could happen to you and the worst thing that could happen to your studies, because you don't realize when you've just lost a year in time.
Yeah.
Which could have been better used if you give yourself a week or two or a month.
Mm-hmm.
But where I want to kind of go with it, I tried to avoid teaching.
Okay.
But I'm finding myself, especially when I started working at the Belfast Met, gravitating back to teaching.
Yeah.
It's a very rewarding feeling when a student says to you, I get that. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Or they're really excelling, watching someone excel and be passionate about what they do.
Yeah.
And whilst I can jump in the research at any time I want, the opportunities just aren't there at the minute, because obviously the pandemic has created economic restrictions on a lot of things, especially academic institutions and research institutions. So they're obviously going to prioritize whatever projects are ahead of them. And then also what you may find is with academic institutions where they may gravitate towards a particular theme at a particular time.
Yeah.
So for example, research along the lines of, say, Black Lives Matter or COVID,
right,
would become priorities for research institutions to understand what is happening now and what can be done and how they can kind of contribute to the overall dialogue. Whilst they may also have other themes in terms of other research fields, which are always continuous, but there's a real ebb and flow of interest. So you kind of have to kind of strike while the iron is hot and chance your hand. If you have a research project, propose it. Yeah. The worst thing they can say is no, and then you go to another institution and see if they say yes.
Yeah, it's just trial and error, really. Yeah,
it is trial and error. Yeah, because it's like a job application. They may terminate your application on a technicality.
Mm-hmm.
They may see someone with other experience. They may not have the same amount of experience you have, but that experience that they may have may be more valuable to what the project asks for. So it is just, you just gotta chance it.
Yeah.
And as you're asking about like the live music,
mm-hmm.
I mean, I was running gigs at the start of the PhD, and then obviously when Johnny and I formed Live Free Tour Booking, and we're working with much larger money than what me and Sean worked with.
Yeah.
Probably about 40, 50 times the money we were working with in those early days of Black Staff Music.
Yeah.
it is, it can be very lucrative, but it can also be very risky.
How do you manage all that? Like, how do you manage to make sure, you don't go into debt, you don't go bankrupt, you make sure that you're making profit and even breaking even at sometimes. But how do you manage that while still providing a service that you want to do?
Right. So there's the difference between me and Johnny. Johnny had these great ideas, but he is absolutely useless with money. So he appears to be. He could probably be an accounting genius for all I know. But then you also have me, the other side of yin and yang, where I'm I'm the accountant and the bookkeeper of the duo. I'm the one who kind of does all the contracting, the one who does all the accounts, balances the books, keeps the receipts, manages the offers, makes sure the taxation is correct.
You're the
because when you're working at
mastermind
this sort of
behind it all.
level, you're starting to work with all different types of taxation, like VAT, business tax, FEU. So I make sure that's okay while he does other miscellaneous roles within what we do. He may go capture talent, I may go capture talent, he may settle a deal, I may settle a deal, but ultimately I like to have the final say in if this is viable or not. Yeah. I mean, higher profits, how do you manage loss? Well, you manage loss by going to the bank machine or making sure you have a lot of cash in your pocket on the night. It is what it is. I always call it controlled gambling.
Mm-hmm.
Because you understand the stakes that are ahead of you.
Yeah.
You know what it takes to get that amount of money. It's essentially gambling. It's also essentially fundraising. A ticket is a dividend in the overall budget and costing. Okay. So the more tickets you sell, the closer you are to breaking even. The more tickets you sell off that, you then profit. Yeah. But profiting also kind of comes in different ways, because there's different types of deals that are running throughout the industry where where bands are given a guarantee, but there's also what is known as a versus back end, which is a certain percentage then goes to the artist, and whatever's left is split accordingly. So it's all about very careful reading, especially when it comes to contracting and negotiations. There are industry standards that have to be followed, and you do have to navigate that. Sometimes you can ask an artist what do they want, and they will tell you, and then you counter offer, or it may be really acceptable and you just take it.
Yeah.
Other times it is a dance, and you have to make the right moves in order to get the artist.
Almost like a chess game. Yeah.
It is. It's strategy. That is exactly what it is. It is strategy. Is thinking ahead. You got to think, right, well, if I'm going to sell an event, I need £8,000, for example, in a 400 cap venue. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm also going to have to think of a ticket price that doesn't put me into a loss, because if they're £8,000, then all of a sudden then venue hires £600-700. I need to put public liability cancellation insurance on top of it. I need to put loader in, I need to put a support band, who's going to pay the sound man. Have it all in front of you before you make that first move.
Yeah.
Sometimes you may form a relationship with these bookers and they'll just tell you straight what's happening. Mm-hmm. And that's how you book one of their smaller acts, and all of a sudden they come back with a bigger act.
Yeah, and you just build your way up.
Yeah, for the case of, like, say we're doing like Gary Newman in the Ulster Hall on 21st of May 2022, get your tickets. Available at ulsterhall.co.uk. And how that came about was, well, I worked with Gary Newman in 2018.
Right.
So I obviously had a relationship with their tour manager. Shout out Dave. And then Dave. He was able to help me put together what was seen as a reasonable offer to then present to the agent. And then I was able to settle that deal very quickly. So obviously that is a show of considerable cost. Mm-hmm. And there's obviously other artists who are working with at that level where I've picked up the phone and just spoken to the person. Yeah. I think picking up the phone is great, especially in a world of emails. Excuse me. I can understand that emails provide accountability.
Yeah.
But to pick up a phone and actually have a chat to a person, especially during the pandemic as well,
it means so
just
much
having
more.
Someone to speak to, you're able to form that relationship a lot quicker.
Yeah, it goes a long way, just making one phone call.
Yeah, just say, here, look, doing emails, and like, here, can I give you a call? And then they go, yeah, sure, there's my number, call me at like 3:00 on Tuesday.
Yeah.
And that's how it goes. That's how I've actually accomplished quite a lot. I mean, me and him, Live Free Tour Booking is a DIY partnership.
Mm-hmm.
It's DIY through and through. We don't have any government funding or anything like that. There's, we don't have any like big money pockets behind us here. Mr. Moneybags. We're just two dudes who work normal jobs, who want to put on class shows.
Yeah.
And that's how it is. We just want to put on absolutely smashing shows.
And how do you balance this with what you do, like with your teaching and in the mat?
Oh, I do not. It is so unhealthy. I do not sleep anymore.
That's not good.
So sometimes, like when you guys are like in class, for example, and watching a film, well, that's when I whip open the laptop and start doing emails.
Yeah.
It's like I'm sometimes sitting there like doing like the books for Newman, doing like the contracts for like Steven Seagal's, the Bronx, everything, making sure the artwork for Andy Schaff is okay, making sure sport bands know what the gig's happening next week, making sure everything's together. I'm sitting there for that hour, beating out, no joke, about 250, 300 emails. And just making sure it's all about supervision.
Yeah.
I mean, whilst looking after books is one thing, having that kind of accounting mindset, you've also got to be accountable for making sure that everything runs on time. Are you an accountant or are you an event manager? It's a clear role you have to define.
Yeah.
And it's also delegation as well. I mean, if you're in a partnership, don't become a control freak.
Mm-hmm.
If someone can go off and do something, make sure they go off and do it, whilst you look after something a little bit more important. So I'll send, like Johnny, for example, mate, go around and make sure the posters are done, or here, make sure this band has this, that, and the other. Make sure you have the catering writer.
Mm-hmm.
And he may turn around and say to me, mate, I am obviously swamped in offers here right now, making sure this is all balanced out. Can you go check on the venue to make sure they have the following?
Yeah.
And it's just a simple text exchange, mate, WhatsApp, phone calls, whatever. Just we're at the pinnacle of communication. It's only going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
People, I mean, sometimes I'm absolutely rubbish at getting back to emails because I'm just stressed. But yeah, it's so easy to get in contact with people these days.
Yeah.
And on the other hand out there, I mean, what I'm kind of talking about, like all these different things going on is, and what I mentioned about the PhDs, is you've also got to learn when to take a break.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to do any of this at weekends. I mean, if the show's on a weekend, fair enough. But if it's not, if we have a clean weekend, I don't do anything.
Yeah.
Understand that time just to recharge is extremely important.
100%. Mental health is really important. And if you don't,
100%, man. I mean,
you go down some dark tunnels.
I mean, I just published a report with a local organization called Counseling All Nation Services, called Hearing Our Needs, which looks at the emotional well-being and the mental health needs of Black, Asian, and minority ethnic communities. But we did 7 workshops across Northern Ireland in 2019, and we spoke to everybody from all different types of communities.
Yeah.
And hearing their stories, hearing what they see and what they need, I mean, it only heightened my appreciation for looking after one's mental health. The idea of self-care is, you have to do it. You have to look out for each other. You have to look out for yourself. You have to look out for each other. You have to be kind of aware of what different people need.
100%.
And if you're running extremely stressful environments, regardless of any age, it catches up on you.
Yeah.
I mean, I was doing back in like 2018, 2019. I mean, I was run on fumes at one point, and I didn't think anything of it.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, April, May 2019, I crashed.
Yeah.
Like I flatlined. That was it. It's just, couldn't get out of bed sometimes.
You hit the low.
You think, yeah, I'm all good here. I'm all good. And boom.
Slap shit once.
Out like a light. That's it. You're done.
100%.
And it's the small thing that just gets you.
Yeah. Now, a question I'm sure many people after hearing this are probably thinking to themselves, I want to ask you, so I'm going to do it on behalf of them. Who do you think is the biggest group or artist that you have worked with, and why?
Well, I'm going to do Gary Newman, because he's a living legend. But
Okay.
to the younger listening audience,
Yeah.
I offer a teaser.
Okay.
For 2022, especially in what is known as Q3, Q4 2022.
Okay.
We have someone extremely considerable coming to the Ulster Hall. Extremely considerable. And it's going to be amazing. And it was meant to happen. It was meant to be announced back in September, but something happened and I was raging.
Right.
So we're going to be announcing it very soon. But Newman for me is the biggest artist I've worked with. One, because I worked with him as a tour photographer in 2019 on this Savage Orchestral tour.
Okay.
And kind of formed a bit of a relationship with him. But also, I mean, my dad showed me who he was when I was like 8.
Yeah.
And I mean, Our Friends Electric, that song was one of the first songs I like listened to on repeat.
Mm-hmm.
He's also the reason why I stayed as a music photographer, because obviously at the end of Treason and Black Stop Music and stuff, I kind of got fed up working the circuit. And I was like thinking, John, I'm just gonna trade in my camera here, get the money and go.
Yeah.
We're done. You know, I'm just fed up. I've lost all my access to whatever else I was doing because I didn't have the backing anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, you know what, I'm gonna apply for passes for Newman. This was March 2018, February, March. And said to myself, to say no, I'm gonna sell the camera.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden I sent the email. 5 minutes later, it says, yeah, you can do Belfast and Dublin. And I went out and spent £2,500 on a new camera and lens. Throw myself into a massive credit card debt.
Yeah.
And then photographed for his PR company. And then I went out and toured with him the following November.
Right.
And as I was saying to you, making that relationship, and then the business was growing.
Yeah.
He had a new album coming out. We decided to chance our hand, and they accepted the offer for the Ulster Hall because the Limelight gig was absolutely packed.
Yeah.
Like I remember I took my father to that show, and he just came up to me at the end, like 7 songs in, and just said, "Man, I can't stay in this crowd. It's too claustrophobic."
Yeah.
It was like an
needed a
800
bigger
cap.
venue.
It was like an 800 cap venue pushed to its limit.
Oh.
And I mean, I watched them on stage. I mean, the stage set for even like, I was in Limelight,
Yeah.
and I mean, the stage set that he had was fantastic, even scaled down.
Mm-hmm.
But then you see it, the exact same kind of thing done in the Royal Albert Hall in London, with a 30-piece orchestra with him and all these visuals. Then you're going, right,
you need a bigger venue.
This is he needs the big venue. Yeah. He needs the space. He's like, I don't know, he's like a border collie. He needs the space to run. Yeah. Even though the dude's 64. He's still going absolutely out of like he's a good dude. He's a creative inspiration for me. And I'm glad to call him a friend.
Fair enough. That sounds like quite an interesting story, and it seems to be like quite close to home with you.
Yeah, it was
nice.
just it was either it happened or it didn't happen, and it happened. So I did the tour, then I flew out to India halfway through the tour to go work with the university on a project, and then flew back to Germany to then join the tour again. So that was like 3 weeks of my life was solid photography, and it just reassured my love and passion for photographic art.
Sounds amazing.
And people.
Sounds amazing. Now, another question. It would be more of a story time. What is the most crazy experience you've had at a concert, gig, whatever it is? Give me it.
Some of these I can't share on air. I'm sorry.
Let's scale it down a bit then. Yeah.
I mean, some of my early memories of working in production was working for T13 when they were doing like Electric Playground and like Cream.
Yeah.
And how absolutely busy that was. And I remember one of the nights where I had a little too much to drink and I was just running about backstage and doing whatever I was doing. And then all of a sudden I blacked out and then found myself on stage at the DJ booth with the Dead Presidents.
Okay.
And it was just mental.
Yeah.
I can hear. And then I think I stole their bottle of vodka because they had a suitcase. No. And I just opened the suitcase, seen the bottle of vodka, and then jumped off stage and into the crowd. And just went off and went and been a wee Italian.
I'm genuinely
But,
not even surprised.
You know, I haven't drank in 3 years.
I was actually going to
And
ask that question. What made you decide to go completely sober?
being a Hallion, that's what.
Yeah.
No, I'll be honest with you. I got really fed up and feeling like trash, and that's the short answer of that. You know, so
Was it difficult?
I mean, no.
No.
I was in Kansas with a friend of mine who used to live in West Belfast because he married a girl from West Belfast. He was from Hayes, Kansas. I went over and seen him, and all we did was party. And I just had enough. The last thing I had a drink of was a glass of 7 times distilled vodka. It smelled like nail polish remover. And I just remember slamming down the glass and going, I am done. He looked at me and just went, what do you mean you're done? I says, I am done. And that was it. That was April 15th, 2019. And the hangover after that was colossal. There was also, I also met a personal hero of mine, a guy called Ian Mackay, who played in a band called Minor Threat and Fugazi, Washington DC legend.
Okay.
And he did a seminar as part of a geography conference of all things in Washington DC, and it was led by a guy called Tyler Sonjison, or Dr. Sonjison. I hope I'm pronouncing his name right. Just Tyler Sonic, I call him. And he's from Michigan. Okay. And I couldn't believe it when I seen it on the program that Ian Mackay was going to be speaking here. And I did a portrait of him outside the hotel. And he just talked about the edge of responsibility.
Yeah.
And it just that on the 30 hours traveling home from Kansas, I remembered everything he said. And I haven't went near it since.
Mm-hmm. It's just something that stuck with you, yeah?
It just stuck with me. And I'm an adult now. And you've got to move on. It's not wrong with having a drink.
Yeah.
But I was just wasting money and wasting energy and damaging my health. And when I could have been putting that to greater use, that money and that time and effort to greater use elsewhere. And that's exactly what I done. I mean, go out and have a drink. By all means, do it. Be safe. Be responsible. Be aware. And look after yourself. That would be my advice to anybody, you know. Nothing wrong with having a beer.
100%.
Do it.
Now, before we go, is there anything at all you would like to promo, say, go get it? Is there anything like business-wise you'd like to advertise?
Buy every single ticket to all my shows. Go follow Live Free Tour Booking, Live Free Tour Booking, at Live Free Tour Booking on Instagram. We have so many other different shows coming up. Again, thank you so much, Lewis, for having me on here.
No problem. Thank you for coming on.
Shout out Mickey and Robbie. Shout out Ethan. That's the Live Free Wrecking Crew, is what we'll call ourselves. Big thank you to everybody who supported Live Free Tour Booking, especially over the last 2 years. Shout out all the local bands who we work with. Shout out all the international bands we work with. Shout out Mum and Dad. What's up? You know, promo wise, keep an eye out for what we're doing. You know, what I would even encourage everybody to do is, I mean, come support us, yes, but if you have a friend who's in the local arts or is running gigs, is doing an art exhibition, is selling something, support them, especially during this time, especially because we're going to do another lockdown potentially.
Yeah.
You know, these people got to eat too, you know, their livelihoods as artists are going to be affected.
Exactly.
Speak to everybody, speak to your friends, check on your friends. I mean, with a considerable amount of mental health talk here today.
Yeah.
Check on your friends, make sure everything's all good. There's nothing wrong with going over to someone and saying, hey man, are you cool? Because sometimes when you say that, it could just give them the chance to open up and really seek help. That's my advice. Don't be afraid. I mean, we are in a paradigm of mental health awareness.
Well,
be part of that paradigm. You know,
exactly.
Reach out.
Thank you so much, Stephen, once more for joining me today.
I really appreciate it, Lewis. Glad to be on the debut episode. This is amazing.
100%.
Hopefully I've answered all your questions and at least provided some entertaining stories.
More than definitely. And I want to say thank you all.
Actually, less stories, more insight.
Yeah.
You know, I can maybe come on the podcast another time and I'll have a real think about some crazy stories. We'll do a plus 18 episode, right?
100%.
Where I can start talking about all the crazy stuff that happens. But until then, I would have to bid you adieu on that one.
Well, thank you everyone for listening. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to come back next week. We won't have a guest, but we'll have a co-host that will be joining me as we discuss movies, video games, you name it, we've got it. Thank you all for listening. I'll see you next week.